Welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, the journey to becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 14 of the Unearthed Man Podcast. I hope you're all doing really well. Thank you again for the feedback that I've been receiving about the podcast, and as you know, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just as a heads up for this interview, I did interview this guest a couple of months ago. So there are some elements in there that we refer to, I think, episode 5. At that point in time, I was going to be doing fortnightly podcasts, but now because I'm doing weekly, the episode's a little bit out. And I also did some pre-canning of interviews just to make sure that I had enough in advance. As anything, you learn as you go along, and all my interviews now are becoming certainly much closer, or the episode is much closer to the interview. I'm sure you will enjoy this interview today. This man is a very softly, quiet-spoken man, but also a man who is very confident in who he is and how he operates. And he's very aligned back to his traditional Islander roots, and we cover those items off in this episode of the podcast. So I did enjoy this podcast. I did enjoy this interview, and he's certainly a guest that I'd be keen to get back on again in a very short period of time. So that's about it for me. Take care, and let's get on with today's interview. My guest today describes himself as a kid from Samoa. He married his high school sweetheart 6 years ago. However, they've been together for around 16 years. He's a men's coach, a light worker, and a loving mirror. On top of that, he runs his own personal training business and is currently working at an F45 gym, along with supplying Cacao, which is a Samoan drinking cacao. He has a number of programs on the go, such as men's coaching, physical training, and running retreats. He is also actively coaching in the CMB Man Cave program. Welcome to the Unearthed Man Podcast, Ses Slade. Hey, Ses, how are you, mate?
Very well, brother. It's great to be here. So really honoured to be here, Steve. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for accepting to come on board as a guest. I want to take back, we first met in November last year when I did Unleash the Beast. And I've spoken a bit about a few of the things that happened on that in the previous episodes. But you were, we got broken into smaller groups of about 8 men from memory, and you were the coach that was there to support us. So I remember you coming on and helping out with us. So I love connecting with you since then. You went in and helped us, I think, on King's Court when we got split into 2 groups. You were coaching the other group. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had some interactions, particularly when we did all the master classes and everything else. So any recollections that you have from back on the Unleash the Beast experience that we went through?
Oh, Unleash, yeah, back in November. So that was the second one we did. And there's so many. Like, the thing I love about Unleash the Beast is the different demographics that come in. The young, the middle-aged, older men that come in, and blacks, whites, and everything. So, like, it's a beautiful space to be in, and interacting with you also, like someone who has lived quite a long life and experienced a lot of things. So there's a different dynamics that come into play with that, and having even myself as a Samoan guy as a coach, like having that connection and what we can learn off each other. So that's what I love about being in this sort of space, is that there's no hierarchy, and we can literally learn off each other in those sort of in those sort of workshops, in those sort of spaces.
Look, I couldn't agree more. And that's the interesting thing. I think it was a couple of us that were probably in our 50s, but the rest were, as I said, variations of, race, color, creed across the board, different views. And I think exactly right. It's easy for older men to think that they're the ones with the knowledge and wisdom, but we can even learn to, open ourselves up to learn from all the younger people that are around us, because you've had different experiences. You've come from Samoa, you've had a different background, you interpret and see things differently because of your experiences. So having men being able to share that space and be willing to be open to there are different ways, different things out there is pretty awesome. So
definitely.
So tell me a bit about yourself. So the kid from Samoa. So how long been out there? What's how do you what's your connection? You still feel back to your background and I suppose your cultural heritage, and how did you get into this space of consciousness and dealing with men and helping them learn?
For sure. It's where to start really, but I moved here with my family, so I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and so I moved here when I was 4 years old. I was probably 92 we moved here, and even when I reflect on it, at the time I wasn't really aware what was going on. I was 4 years old, but at the same time, like moving from an island to straight to Brisbane, and moving to a predominantly white neighborhood. When I first got here, I didn't realize it was that. I didn't notice it at the time, but as an older person now, older man now, I'm reflecting on it and just seeing how that played out into my childhood and into my teenage years. And I had a really beautiful upbringing. I had a loving family, loving parents. My dad took on the leader role, got the job, looked after the family, and mum took care of me as I was the youngest. Most of my siblings were a bit older. But just growing up around a lot more Australians was a beautiful journey for me too, learning, and even growing up playing rugby was, my dad played international rugby. So
Okay.
Obviously my brothers played, and then I obviously learned rugby growing up. So that was another part of my upbringing. A lot of Polynesians, even in professional sport, it's a big part of Australian culture right now. And so a lot of that was played out in my upbringing. The Polynesian, very traditional, very cultural. The women eat first and the kids eat first before the men do.
Okay.
A lot of the men do all the housework. So we call it the Fat Samoa. There's a lot of traditional ways of the Fat Samoa way, so they call it Fat Samoa. But that's still very much in my family. I can still sort of speak Samoan. So that's one thing I'm trying to relearn again. Obviously, growing up in a white neighborhood, I didn't have many Polynesian friends.
Yep.
But as my siblings got older, I had no one to really bounce off. So that's what I'm trying to relearn now, because we're all adults now. So they're always on to me like, hey, you need to speak the language more. So that's where I'm at with that. I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but try to stick to your question. How did I get to this space of consciousness? It's an interesting word, consciousness, because we're still as humans trying to figure out what consciousness means. It's more of just an awareness game. And for me, you're always sort of like questioning what life is and what's really here, why we're here. And it wasn't until probably in my early 20s, I connected a lot of inspirational, motivational things around sport, how to achieve things, how to get to places, how do I do better in gym. So that's what my first initiation into trying to better myself, like physically and mentally. And my wife was a big inspiration for me, because she's very spiritual, and she got into the game very early. So I sort of really learned off her, like going to workshops and reading books and just discovering my place, like who I am in this world. So it was more of a questioning, like who am I, and who am I without the brown skin, without the Polynesian cultures. That's what's actually underneath all that. So that was it's been going on for probably around 5 to 6 years, trying to just pull back and see who I really am without all this, and to drop all the labels, drop all the rugby, drop all the Samoan, drop all that, and actually just experience it. But hopefully that sort of makes sense. Of sort of kept going there.
No, that's beautiful, because I think in stripping all that back, it's the same sort of thing. Quite funny. It's in Australia, it's like we got to strip out the white. So it's whether it be brown, white, or whatever color, it's about stripping all that back, because it's actually what sits inside us, not what. I think people use the term, well, it's not the skin suit that we got on the outside of us. It's actually what sits inside us, and what does that actually mean for us, and where do we come from? And my concerns is that, we're seeing now way too much of still judgment and conditioning and how we treat others purely from, whatever background conditioning, however we see things, whether it be, people from a religious group or people from a color group or whatever else. And, it's sort of, to touch on your early point, when we were in that room for Unleash the Beast with 50 people, it was like all that got left at the door. It didn't make any difference. It was just people there who had backgrounds and stories who just wanted to say, how do we actually move forward? So, I love that that's where you're at. And, and it's a good example of, we don't have to have been through all these large traumas or lots of mini traumas or anything else to actually go, hey, I'm just going to keep inquiring about who I am and why am I here and what that actually looks like. So, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we get caught up, especially in life. Like, we're trying to get to that next thing. And when you get to that next thing, you just want more. And what I feel people are really looking for is ultimately peace and harmony and knowing that they're okay. It's, knowing that they're worthy. And we want to just be still and enjoy life. And we keep chasing that next thing. And half the time people forget that just to actually be in the dance and enjoy it. Like, you could just carry on with this same label for the rest of your life. Like, I need to make X amount of money. I need to find this partner. And we sort of miss the point half the time. And we more create why we're separated than why we're actually closer and together than we actually really are. And even when you said Unleash the Beast, 50 so men, like, I don't mind actually disagreeing with some people, but at least we can have a civil conversation. Like, just because you're this and that, and you believe that, I'm like, that's okay. Like, I'm learning off what you disagree with me about. I want people to challenge me and help me grow. And I think that's where the challenges and not accepting how people are comes to play.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's part of which is, for me, there's trying to move into the space where there's less opinion and more inquiry. Because most of the arguments, most of those disputes we have is because I feel I need to convince you that my opinion is right, as opposed to understanding where you're actually coming from. So where is that space you're coming from? What's happened back with you? And is there something that, and being open to the fact that, wow, I may have been incorrectly conditioned along the way. And there might have been parts that you had conditioning along the way. And in fact, both of us are carrying stuff that, that we could probably work out more through that. I'm really interested as to why you feel that way and why you're coming from that angle. And I think
definitely
we could open up more discussion if that was the case.
Definitely.
So the other thing that's I know is close to your heart, and that's around ceremonies, and particularly cacao ceremonies. And so again, can you talk through that? Is that more to do with the cultural part from the Samoan point of view, and there was a lot of that taking place, or because my view is, I grew up with no ceremonies, no rituals, apart from those inappropriate ones of, if you're an apprentice, then you might tell someone to get a left-handed screwdriver, or if you're at the football club, you're the one that has to run around, half naked because everyone else thinks that's the right ritual to do, which is just all the immature ones.
The nudie run at the end of the season.
Yeah, correct. All that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I'm interested. Let's talk a bit more about, the ceremony and cacao ceremony and what that means to you.
For sure. So I got introduced to cacao. Well, ceremonies are everywhere in parts of the world. Like, there's ceremonies for anything, spiritually or even just academically. There's ceremonies when people are getting graduations. There's ceremonies when a president or a prime minister are inaugurated, like they're coming in. Like, there's always ceremonies for everything. And I got introduced to cacao a few years ago. Obviously, there's the cacao that you can get from the store on the shop shelf, which isn't 100% cacao. Obviously, it's got sugar. It's gone through different machinery. It's gone through so many different machinery to get to the point where it actually produces chocolate that you can put into smoothies and acai bowls and everything like that. So that's the cacao you get from the store. And the cacao that I'm using, and also a lot of the spiritual community are using, is the 100% pure cacao, the organic version, where nothing's been added or nothing's been taken away. So there's a differentiation. Sorry, there's a differentiation between those, and I think a lot of people are getting confused in that. So for me, I got introduced to cacao probably in 2016 or 2017. A couple of friends of ours, and we were introduced to Guatemalan cacao and Peruvian cacao from South America. So there is a story that these cacaos are from the original strain from centuries and centuries ago.
Okay.
So that's why they make it very ceremonial. That's why it's so pure, and that's why there's a connection to the land. And so that's how I got introduced to it with cacao. And through my journey, I discovered that my family is actually involved in cacao back in Samoa from where I was born through my grandfather, who I'm named after.
Okay.
So it was interesting. Yeah, it was a really interesting journey, like experiencing cacao, doing these ceremonies and everything. And then my cousin, who actually runs a cacao chocolate business, I connected with her, and I'm just like, okay, I need to look into this, because she'd been doing it already for a few years. And then she shared a few stories with me, and I've also been chatting to my mother about it a lot, trying to find out like how was my grandfather connected to it. So that's what I'm still at right now with cacao. And so that was my journey to get to cacao. And where I'm at now is, and it's really an opportunity to sit down and ground yourself into it. So when I do sit down with this cacao, I to breathe into it, ground myself, and also think about who was, sorry. When I sit with the cacao, I generally will sit with and think about and feel into where the cacao came from. Like, this has come from Samoa through the grass, through the soil, through the sun, and also to the local farmers who created this cacao, and how it got to my hands in my kitchen. So that's the ceremonial part, and actually pausing, because there's a scientific part about cacao. Is there's a part in your brain called the anandamide, which is also called the bliss molecule. Okay. So when you're drinking cacao, you're able to access this and feel more relaxed. Anandamide's in a lot of different you can get that from fruit, and sometimes not so good things like alcohol and things like that. But you can get that just with chocolate. You can just get that with chocolate, but when you're drinking 100% pure cacao, you're able to. It's a plant medicine. You're able to ground yourself and enjoy it a bit more. So there's a lot to it. I really enjoyed it.
No, mate, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's definitely good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, we dropped back in. I think it went a little bit funny, but we got the last bit of that, so that's pretty cool.
Welcome.
So thanks for that. So the other thing that we spoke about up front is being a light worker. I myself, my wife is probably more open to a wider, spiritual piece. So, she'll see clairvoyance. She'll actually, we're always talking a lot a bit about, pre-life, past lives, so past lives and future lives, and that, we're here for a point in time. And, sort of growing up as a white Australian in country Victoria, mainly around all farmers and everything else, you're very closed off, in this space. But having now slowly moved into, becoming full plant-based and, opening up from last November and starting to go, hey, who am I to say that this is right or wrong? And I need to be open to, that we could be just here for this period of time. And there may be more to this. I think there's a lot of religions that are being based around it. We talk about souls heaven from a Catholic or a Christian point of view, and I think a lot of religions have that concept about where you're going to go next. So from you, light worker, what does that look like for you, and what does that mean for others who are trying to understand or try to interpret that?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I feel there's a lot of people in the world right now that aren't having a really good time. Whether that may be their upbringing, their own beliefs, or their own unlimiting beliefs, and even when it comes to trauma, that's it's a really it's a sad thing that people are experiencing that, even when it comes to race, gender, and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's a really complicated situation, and I just feel a lot of people aren't having a good time. So what I feel as a light worker is everyone is a light worker. There's light and dark, there's love and hate. There's always an opposite, left, right, up, down, and it's really whether which place you want to come from. And what I find with and it's not about being just happy and ignoring all the things that you haven't experienced. It's more about how you navigate and alchemize and integrate everything you've experienced to still come out okay. Because there's so many stories of people that have gone through some traumatic experience, some heartbreaking things, and they're still able to be standing up. So my role is what I feel that actually, I think, there's 7 billion people in this world. Everyone is a light worker. And for me, is my role, and what I want to be here is that example that you're not here for a long time, and you're here to enjoy it, and you're here to share and connect and express, have that human experience. And I think that's what people are missing out when they are dancing in the darkness and dancing in more of the hate. Not saying ignore all the things you haven't done. It's being to say, hey, I went through that too, and this is how I got through it. And that's what I feel people are missing sometimes.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, thanks for that. The one area that I'm starting to be becoming more interested in, and I think you spoke on the alchemy side, but also from a quantum physics point of view. There's a lot research now coming out about, we see ourselves as matter, but ultimately we're probably, from a quantum physics, we're energy first. And if we're all just energy first and connected to the wider energy field, Earth, universe, that's around us, what we see is that energy actually contained now into a form of matter. But if all our cells are just little energy bundles themselves, they will pick up on other energy frequencies, and they will pick up on how people operate. So, to your point about being that light worker, if we're actually seeing or working in that positive space and trying to generate as much of that positive energy as we can, still acknowledging some of the things that have happened to us, but moving forward beyond that, then that positive energy can radiate out to others that are around us, and they can pick up on it and everything else. So,
for sure, and it really gives people the permission to. Yeah, like, people are so accustomed to, like, I need to feel this pain like the whole time, like, and there's some people out there that actually enjoy the victimhood, and it's a shame that they're not able to get out of it. And it's sometimes people are a victim, but sometimes people play that for the rest of their lives, for years and years. Sometimes so they transcend and pass away. And yeah, it's a very interesting, and there's so many layers to that sort of to this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm reading at the moment is 2 books. I think it was The Courage to be Disliked, and then now it's The Courage to be Happy. And fundamentally, they base it off Adlerian philosophy or psychology, and that's exactly right. It goes a bit about people don't maybe want to be the victim, but they'll continue to act in the victim because they know that one way or the other they'll get a level of attention. And it's a life they always want, right? So they may not enjoy the life, but at least they know that life, and the fear of moving to this different life becomes so much greater that they just decide to stay in this space and operate in this space because, attention is attention, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. Someone got attention, and so it's interesting when you start to look in that area as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So the other one then to touch on is a loving mirror. So talk to me about, what does that look like for you, sort of you being that loving mirror for others and and also for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, like, to be a mirror is actually to mirror what people aren't willing to look at, or parts of themselves they see in me. And what I like in that is I'm not here to upset you or try to trigger you, but it will ultimately come out if there's things you aren't willing to look at. And what I like to do is, I don't like to do it. It just sort of just happens organically with a lot of the people I interact with. Because sometimes when you are in the work, you're able to get to a place that even when you're communicating and with other people, you still be able to communicate how you feel and not get emotional about the actual situation. So I will always speak to what I see in people and mirror what I'm hearing and seeing. I actually ask questions to get them to really reflect on how they really feel. So it's more of a place of when I say that loving mirror, I'm not here to try to hate you or get you uncomfortable. It's more to love on you and able to mirror things that you're not willing to look at just yet. And I do that with a lot of the coaching. And I've actually, it's interesting, especially with social media these days, I've upset a lot of people with some of the posts I've done and with DMing and it's interesting. I'm not there trying to upset people. I really love a civil conversation. Like we said earlier, oh, why do you believe that? Where did that come from? Talk to me about that part. I don't understand why you got to the outcome. I literally had a back and forth last night with this older gentleman, and it's almost like I see where I wanted to get to. I'm like, I don't want to end this conversation and have this man angry at me. I'm like, that's not my intention. And it was all about politics, and politics never work.
Yeah.
And we got to a place where we were civil and we were giggling at the end, and he was able to come through, and I was able to come through and learn a lot in that conversation and know where he was at and know where I was at. So to go back to the loving mirror, it's more just an invitation to have a look at things that you're not aware of or things that you've always seen, and you could probably look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I love that. For me, there's parts of it, mate, which is I find a lot of people seek and provide sympathy, which means I'm validating your point of view, and I'm validating that emotion may be right or wrong, or I'm validating where you come from. Whereas for me, I think coming from more, that is exactly right, that loving mirror. Yeah. We may disagree. I still love you, but I'm coming from a really soft space to say, hey, are you playing the victim now? Are you self-justifying all the beliefs that you've had, or the conditioning you've had, or what's happened in your life prior to land in this space? And I think all the recent times we've been through, I've found it extremely intriguing, as you pointed out, on social media and different things, the level of turmoil and the level of almost aggressive behavior that gets taken place between two people. And it's amazing what fear drives. And I think it's because people aren't perhaps willing to understand where their own fear is coming from and what's happening within them that's actually driving that situation.
We're on survival mode as human beings. We're on survival, and if we question anything about how to survive, and that will come, even our beliefs will come into question. And then that's when the argument starts, and that's when everyone go at each other. I'm like, no, my beliefs are stronger, so because I need to survive this conversation. And it's a slippery slope when you get into just even beliefs in religion, and like even with everything COVID-19, I'm sure different people have beliefs on vaccines, and we're all want the same thing. We just want to feel safe and find peace and harmony in this world. And we come in different ways. We all want the same thing, and we're just not hearing each other.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's also parts of that where, because we're becoming, my view is, as a society or a community, more and more externally focused and attaching more and more to who we are to all the external elements around us, that when those external elements change, I'm safe in my workplace. Hang on, now I've got to work from home. All these other things that have happened along the way, that when that's taken from us, there is a part of, we feel there's a part of us that's now missing. Whereas for me, the work that we're doing is actually helping people to go, it doesn't matter what happens externally out there, because we need to care and we need to have empathy and compassion for those who are impacted by it. But I'm not attaching who I am and how I operate to all these other things. So when crises or things pop up, you're more in a position to be able to pivot and handle and continue to move through with a level of living and life and love and positivity, because it's you still got that internally. You haven't attached that to anything else.
Yeah, definitely. We're in a if you think about the caveman days, it was so different back then. Like, survival mode was literally, you're gonna get attacked, so you have to protect yourself. And people these days, like, we're in a different survival mode. We're actually safe.
Yes.
Like, we're probably in the most beautiful time ever. Obviously, there's the government and state police and everything like that comes into play. It's a very complicated, there's so many layers to it, but ultimately we are safe, and we create so many stories within that. And it's our own programming that we're seeing that, oh, we're not okay. We're like, no, you're actually fine. Like, just pause for a second, just breathe. And there's nothing actually happening to you. There's no saber-toothed tiger that's going to come out and get you right now. and it's yeah. I don't have the right answer. It's just the pre-programming and the fear that comes into play, just from the human condition and pre-programming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So before we wrap up, just I'll drop in, or get you to drop in maybe some words of wisdom of men who are out there listening to this. What do you think they can start to think about doing, or what could be a first step for men who go, I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling I'm not sure where happiness is, all that. What's your view about how they could take that first step and where to move from there?
Talk about it. Yeah, just to really talk to some that they feel safe with, connect to groups, connect to men like yourself who are creating this podcast, and on Unearthed Men, and you're also part of CMB, and there's so many different men's programs out there, and there is that slogan, in it weak to speak, and I really believe that, and having conversation, not just deep conversation, but just talking to people, and sharing what's actually going on. And half the time people feel like they need to go deep to really open up. But you could just connect with another man and say, hey, I had this amazing thing happen to me at work, and we're missing that part. Or I had an amazing romantic dinner with my wife. And guys aren't sharing that part. It's almost like a bad thing if they're sharing wins, because we're so tall poppy syndromes are so deep ingrained in Australian culture. That we don't want to celebrate our wins. And I think it's just having that conversation, any conversation, and reaching out. Just start by reading a book, listen to a podcast, and there's so much content out there. You can find anything. So just start.
Nah, that's cool. That's excellent advice, man. And same thing. Any men listening out there, we're up to episode 5 from memory. So just in that space, there's been many men have jumped in here. Ses is another great man. So if you're up in Brisbane, and you want to just be able to have a one-on-one or have a catch up, then Ses is up there. I'll get the details off you, Ses, about where they can find you. We'll drop it in the description of the show. So people can jump in and be able to find you up there and be able to hook into the, there's the CMB men's meet up in Brisbane that I think you've done it online some now, but once we get back to, when back in the world of face to face, it'd be good to be able to, get those hugs and those embraces and all that interaction again. So, man, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. I love the fact that you've allocated out some time. You've shared a lot of your wisdom, and particularly in areas around, the cacao ceremony, light worker, and also in that, how we can be a loving mirror, and still provide that love and support that goes along with it, without, having people turn around being too angry or too upset or anything that comes out of it, just almost holding others to account to where they're at. So really appreciate your time, man. You take care and look after yourself, and we'll certainly keep connecting.
For sure. Thanks very much, brother. It's been an honor to be here, and looking forward to listening to your other episodes too. Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers, man. Take care. That was the chilled Ses Slade. And as I said earlier, it was a real pleasure being able to have that conversation with Ses and talk things around light working. He's linking back to his traditions of being Samoan, and what he's now doing in relation to the men's work, being a mirror for others, and also the Cacao ceremonies. So again, thanks Ses for coming on board. That's it for me. So from the Unearthed Man, take care, much love.